Spice up your sausage game with these hot links. In this recipe, I'm going to show you how to make hot links. There are lots of different kinds, from Louisiana to Texas-style hot links, also known as hot guts. But I'm going to show you what I think of when I think of a hot link in terms of being on a barbecue platter in an assorted tray. This is going to be a sausage with a mix of beef and pork. It's going to have a low-level heat and a lot of smoke. Should be absolutely delicious, and let's get started. For our hot links, I'm going to be using a pretty standard blend of beef and pork. This one's going to be about a 50-50 mix. And for the cuts, I'm using a beef chuck roast, which I have cut into small pieces so that they fit in the grinder. And for our pork, I'm using a pork butt, bone-in, really readily available at any grocery store. I already took that bone out and cut these pieces down as well. As far as the grind, I'm also going to be doing a really standard grind. I'm going to start with a 3/8 inch plate, and then I'm going to move to a 3/16. This is going to give us a nice coarse texture, but also allow us to bind our proteins and our fats together for a great final product. Now, as usual, I have very cold grinder parts and very cold meat. Cold meat and parts is going to help us avoid any smearing issues. If the fat melts out before we want it to, we could have poor texture and some definite flavor loss. So I'm just going to load up the hopper here, and I'm going to grind these together, so it doesn't matter kind of what order they go in. So I'm just going to load it all up together because it's all getting mixed together, so we want that mix to be nice and even throughout. So when you're grinding, you want to keep a pretty constant flow of meat through the auger, because any time spent without meat through here is going to heat up the auger and possibly heat up our meat and our meat block. Again, everything we do in this process is to avoid smearing and that fat bleed out. First grind is done, so I'm going to change out our plate to a 3/16 for our second grind. It's time to break down my grinder, and then I'll be ready to weigh out my meat block so I can get the appropriate amount of seasoning and cure. Then I'll be ready to mix. For our hot links, we're going to be using our hot pork sausage seasoning. This is going to be a great blend of salt, a little bit of sugar, and a good amount of spice for our final product. You can see the chili flakes in here, so I'm really excited about this heat level. Now, we are going to be smoking the sausage. And what I like to do when I smoke sausage is I add cure into the meat block. Pink cure is going to help us in a number of ways. It's going to help us avoid any food safety issues, but it's also going to add a little bit of salt and give us that classic red color that we're looking for. Now, for our 17-pound batch of sausage that we're making, I need 192 grams of our seasoning. Do be careful when you're shaking this out. It gets in the air and it'll make you cough. Pink cure gets used at the rate of 1 ounce per 25 pounds of meat. So since we only have a 17-pound batch here, I broke it down into grams, and I need about 20 grams. Now I'm very gently going to sprinkle this into my meat block. It's time to add our cure and some liquid to our meat block. The easiest way to get the cure into the meat block and get it distributed evenly is to mix it with your liquid before you pour it in. For this, I'm going to use beef broth. It'll complement the recipe really well, and it'll really beef up our flavor. So stir in the cure to the liquid and then pour it in. Now I'm very gently, until the seasoning is mixed in a little better. I'm still gonna be kind of careful with this, but I'm just gonna fold the meat block over itself, kind of like you're kneading bread. Just make sure all the seasoning, all that cure, the beef stock that we put in here is all distributed nice and even throughout. Now I'm going to mix until our meat block gets nice and tacky, which means our protein extraction has started to take hold. Let's see what we got. Yep, looking pretty good. So, like I said, nice and tacky, so that it just sticks to your hand. We're ready to stuff. Now I'm going to load our sausage stuffer with our meat block, starting in the center and pushing it out towards the walls. And this will help us avoid any air pockets we might get in there. Now these casings are natural hog casings. They are 32 to 35 millimeter in size, which is going to work really well for our sausage. I use this size of casing for probably about 75% of the sausages I make. I find it lends itself really well to the grill, and it's a good size and a good portion. And these have been soaking for about an hour and a half. It's a good idea to get these soaking in some lukewarm water and having them set out at room temperature even before you start your grind. That'll give you plenty of time to get all that stuff done and get these nice and malleable so that they're really easy to work with. So I'm going to find the end here. I'm going to pull some water through because that'll give our casing one final rinse before it goes onto the horn. I'm going to put a little water on our horn to lube it up and start threading. And that water, as well as giving it one last rinse through the casing here, is also going to help lube up our horn. All right, so we've got 3 strands lined up on our horn here, and we're gonna start casing. I'm gonna put a little bit of water down on the counter here, and that'll help the sausages from sticking. It'll make them easy to move as they come off the horn. Now we're gonna go through and link up our hot links. I like to have my hot links a little longer. Generally, I eat these on a barbecue platter, something like that, so they don't necessarily need to fit on a bun. So I'm gonna go a good 8-9 inches on all these and link them up just like we would any other sausage. And the technique is pinch, pinch, and spin. So we're actually spinning every other link. And once we're all linked up here, I will go through with our sausage pricker and eliminate any air pockets. Lastly for today, I'm going to set these on a tray and set them in the fridge overnight. This is going to allow our seasoning and our cure to develop on the meat. Obviously, you can go straight into the smoker at this point. This is just a step that I prefer when I'm making sausage. It's a new day and we are ready to smoke our hot links. One of the reasons why I like letting these sit in the fridge overnight is to develop the pellicle. The pellicle is a thin, sticky layer of protein that forms on the outside of the casings. And what that does is actually going to help absorb smoke and smoke flavor. If we have a lot of moisture on the outside of these sausages, it's going to hinder the cooking process as well as the flavor development. Now I have our PK100 set up for 110 degrees for our first stage of our smoke cycle. This is going to be a drying stage, which is going to help dry out those casings just a little bit more before we start the cooking process. And after that, I will increase the temperature of the smokehouse about 10 degrees every hour. Once we max out at a smokehouse temperature of 170 degrees, we'll leave it alone until we reach an internal temperature of 148 degrees in our sausage. After we hit 150 degrees internal temperature on our hot links, I pulled them and I let them rest at room temperature for about half an hour. And that'll start the cooling process without shocking them too much. After that, I set them in the fridge overnight to cool completely. And now the best part is when I get to grill some up and finally try them. All I did here was I grilled them off and brought them up to temperature, getting them nice and hot. And I'm pairing it with 2 sauces. When I try hot links, I like pairing it with a sweeter barbecue sauce. So here I have our Blue Ribbon and our Memphis King. It's gonna be nice and tangy and sweet and should give a really nice balance to our sausage. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Good amount of fat in there. You can see it's nice and juicy. You can see it's glistening a little bit. That's just the fat coming out. Looks like a beautiful pink color. Teeniest little bit of smoke ring, but it's really nice, even. Looks like a great texture, and I'm very excited to try this. So here we go. I gotta say, I love that part of my job is making sausage, because when I get to make things like this, it's just so good. And this is really what I think of when I think of a hot link. I imagine this on a barbecue platter with some pulled pork, some mac and cheese, maybe even a little brisket, and just tons of sauces and just going to town and getting meat sweats. But this hot link, the heat on it is just very subtle, but it's there and it's well-rounded. Salt levels are great. The smoke penetrated beautifully, so we got a great smoke flavor in here. And overall, really happy with that texture. That is a great sausage. If you like this video and recipe, don't forget to click subscribe. And if you like the products I used, head to psseasoning.com to find out more. Follow us on all forms of social media. And until next time, I'm Chef Jed. Thanks for watching.